Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be reading r/relationship advice. My brother is living with me in secret, and my mom thinks I'm cheating on my husband. About 2 weeks ago, my female 25 sister-in-law, female 32, dropped a bombshell on my brother, male 29, that their youngest, 5 female, may not be his child because she's been sleeping with her ex-boyfriend around the time they got pregnant. He showed up on my doorstep and asked if he could stay with me while he figured stuff out. I of course said yes, and I made up the guest room for him. My brother asked if I could keep his situation private while he figures out his next moves, and especially not tell our parents. My mom has an extremely close relationship with sister-in-law, and with how she treated her older sister who divorced her husband after he cheated on her. She doesn't view cheating as something worth divorcing over. Basically, the other day, my mom and I were on FaceTime, and I was showing her how my quarantine garden was coming along. My back was facing the house, and during the call, she briefly saw my brother pass by a window without a shirt on. She ended up cutting the call short and left me confused, until she called back last night and lectured me about how I was betraying my husband, and that marriage is a promise for a lifetime. She said she understood I was lonely, but this was not the way to handle things. My husband has been in Canada, we live in the States, since April with his father, who is in kidney failure and struggling with other illnesses, and is looking like he won't make it past Christmas at this point. He's aware of the situation and aware of not telling my parents anything. I couldn't explain to my mom and tried playing it off that she was just seeing things, but she didn't buy it. I told my brother what happened, and now he's frustrated about it. He asked for just a few more days to get his head straight, and then he will talk to our parents about it, but knowing him, those few days could turn into weeks. I don't want to spill to my parents, but this situation is extremely uncomfortable. What should I do? I say, do give your brother those few days, and if he doesn't talk to them in those few days, talk to him again and be like, hey, I'm extremely uncomfortable. My fiance of 6 years was on a video game chat while our newborn son was dying. I think the game is closer to a cult, and I think I'm losing everything. I'm 29, he's 31. The last 3 months have been awful. He is a child from another relationship that lives with us full-time. Our son Danny was our first together. Let me back you up though, and I would appreciate that if anyone can identify the game, which you probably can if you're familiar with it, that you cannot name it. I know several of our teammates read it, and I don't want this coming up on a search. Looking back, I had misgivings about the game/group for a while, but nothing I could ever get into words. It just didn't seem normal somehow, but I convinced myself it was a harmless video game. My fiance Mark has always been a gamer and kind of a loner. I told myself it was good he had a social group. I have an account and played very casually, just never got into it. It seemed like a lot of work for nothing. I do game as well, sometimes in fit and burst. I'll spend a whole week beating a new game and then not touch a controller for a month, so I know what it's like to get really into and hooked on a new game. And it can be a fun way to blow off steam. But not to sound too high on myself for one. These all seemed like really low quality people. One guy bought a house and invited us to a housewarming. The guy, Mark's friend, had rotten teeth, holes in his shoes, and all the furniture that he just moved smelled like cat pee, and looked to be about 25 years old. Other people there were similar. Another guy and his wife who both looked like they'd just gotten out of a homeless shelter. Again, missing and rotting teeth, stringy hair, and the husband was clearly a late-stage alcoholic, which was obvious by the way he was drinking. The more I heard about these folks and when I met them, the less I liked them. A different guy had apparently a long-term complicated relationship with a married woman that produced 2 kids that he then ran away from and let the husband raise. Guy had no idea they might not even be his kids. These people all seem to drive broken down cars, never have stable housing, jobs, or relationships. And while I absolutely understand bad times can happen to anyone, they just seem to have lifestyles that were a mess of their own creation. No standards, no self-respect. As time went on, Mark got more and more involved. Always playing, always going here and there. Everywhere on a dime in the middle of the night, because he had to help his team. Their group structures several layers of secure chats. Everyone always trying to be loyal, trusted, and good enough to get into a higher status group. Weekends started to be spent sitting in random parking lots for hours, waiting for someone to tell him to hit a button. And if the plan didn't work, he'd be sulky and moody the rest of the day. This was all gradual and sort of presented in pieces, so I couldn't or wouldn't see the big picture. When our son passed away, I saw it more clearly. What happened was, my mom was over and it was a normal evening. My mom was feeding Danny, and all of a sudden she started calling for me, and she sounded frantic. I come in the house and Danny isn't breathing. My mom said he was fine 1 second and just stopped breathing the next. I called 911 immediately and tried to figure out if Danny had choked. I did the infant Heimlich on him, but it didn't help. I started CPR. I did everything else I, as a nurse, know how to do. The ambulance came and they got him back on the way to the hospital. But then he coded again and they couldn't revive him. Our boy was gone at 3 weeks old. We did not have an autopsy. The doctors figured out it was likely an undiagnosed congenital heart defect. The cause of death was cardiac arrest. What was Mark doing during all of this? Texting his super elite game chat. I didn't find this out until 2 days later, when the team performed an in-game action to honor him. Nobody bought food or asked if we needed anything. We got a few messages, of course, but the memorial to our son was a coordinated in-game action. I was livid, murderous. I ripped Mark's phone from his hands and read the chat. He was on it on the way to the hospital. He was on it at the hospital. He was on it the second Danny was produced dead. He was on it that night. When I asked him what the ever-looking fuck he was thinking about, his answer was he didn't know what to do with himself. He felt helpless and panicking and just had to talk and try to distract himself and get support. I tried to swallow this. I really did. Everyone handles emergency situations differently, but at the end of the day, I just couldn't. When I remembered back as clearly as I could, Mark wasn't in the room with us. He wasn't with my mother. He certainly wasn't with me or our son. He was on a fucking game chat. I can't do this anymore. In the months that have followed, I see how crazy this has all gotten. It started as a normal hobby, a fairly normal game group, and while I didn't like the people, I don't have to like everyone my fiance likes, and I don't have to be into everything he is. But the game ate his life. He didn't see his other friends anymore, he dropped other hobbies, he even called in sick to work a couple days to play. And while at the time I wrote them off as mental health days, because who hasn't done that? And now I see he's never done that before either. He's taken mental health days, sure, but he's used them to catch up on errands, hang out with me, or just have a rest day. Not call in the hallway to work saying he suddenly became ill, to play a game all day and defend his territory. I didn't even know he'd done that until he came home later that night. I thought he'd gone to work. As for the group he was talking to the night Danny died, I can't come out with them. They're a family that apparently bonded during a big team drama at Vail several years ago, and they don't let new people in. Again, I don't need to be everywhere Mark is, but it hits me wrong to have a group say, your future wife is unwelcomed. In concert, this is all too much. Mark sees no problem with it. He says it's just his hobby. Those are his friends, and I'm being controlling. He'll blow up with, fine, I'll just quit and stay home and stare at you 24/7 all the time. He's accused me of trying to isolate him, and he's even accused me of emotional abuse. Now that we've lost our son, it's only been 3 months. It's still very raw for me. And where's my fiance? Dropping everything to do tricks in a game, hoping he'll get a treat. Spending all his time with people who, no matter how shallow it makes me sound, are trash and give me the creeps. This is a cult. These misfits have all found each other somehow. And instead of thinking critically and observing how insane this all is, they're all about team and family and loyalty. We've lost our child, and the man I thought I would marry, that I love like no one else, is now calling me abusive because I have a problem with it. I don't know, maybe I am being controlling. It doesn't seem like it to me though. I honestly wouldn't care if he played, as long as there was a time for me, for us, for a relationship, for anything else. But if I ask that he forego an event, he blows up again with the same I'm abusive, controlling, isolating speech. I can't stay with him if this keeps up. But how do I leave after just having lost a child, and us being newer to the area, and really only having my mom? We moved closer to her to help when Danny came. I thought the year or so would be focused on our baby anyway, and I could meet some other moms. But now I have no one if I leave Mark. I've wondered if maybe I'm clinging because of that. I just can't think straight anymore. I don't know if the problem is me because I'm feeling lonely and insecure, Mark/the game, or what. He seems to generally mean it when he calls me controlling. That he's planned these events for days/weeks, and I just want to isolate him. Sometimes I really disagree because I don't think I'd care as much if we had anything, but then again, I don't know. I really need some perspective, advice, something. My first advice would be go to therapy. You need therapy to deal with the loss you have and what's going on with your husband. That seems like some cult stuff. I'm not gonna lie, that's not natural. People don't behave like that. They shouldn't behave like that.